Hello, I'm Tracy Nicholas, and welcome to Folkloring. I am a passionate folklore practitioner, and to me, folkloring is more than just a podcast. It's my commitment to help you connect with your roots and awaken the wisdom within you.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Folkloring. And today I'm here with Laura Lewis-Barr, and she is the creator and creative genius behind Psyche's Cinema. And we are going to talk all about what that is and what she does. So, welcome, Laura. Thanks for being here today.
Oh, very excited to be with you, my neighbor.
Yes, we are both in Chicago. Now, before we get into what your company is and what you do, have you been folkloring lately? And if so, how?
Yay, I like the question. And when we met last week to just check in, that very night, I went to the symphony and they did an unusual program called A Soldier's Tale. And it was a fairy tale that Stravinsky had set to music. And I thought, oh, I'm going to mention this because going to the theater, the symphony, a museum, I'm always grateful for the folklore that I'm studying because it really enhances my appreciation and knowledge of the symbols that I see in these works of art. So, and I made some tinctures this week. So
Oh,
that's
nice.
two different folkloring.
Yeah, it's amazing when you start to pay attention how much folklore you notice around us. It's just, it's everywhere, which is amazing. Now, for me, it's Halloween as we're taping this. It's early enough in the day that I'm hoping the doorbell doesn't ring. And I have been decorating, so I think that that qualifies as folkloring. So I've got all my Halloween decor up and ready for this sort of shared ceremony that we have with the kids coming and shared with our community, really. Not people we know, not our families, but with community. And so that's always fun. So that's what I'm in the middle of doing right now.
Nice.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about who you are. If you can tell us about yourself and kind of the path you took to get to where you are, and then about what you do.
Sure. So I noticed about 5 or 6 years ago that the paths that I had been taking, these parallel paths, had all come together. So I was a theater director and educator. I was a writer, passionate about Jungian psychology and fairy tales related to that. And I was a presenter and I made my living doing presentations. And I started to make some little films, and I found that all of these things kind of moved together for me as I bought myself a camera and decided to teach myself how to use it. And I had some dolls in the house and I started to use them because, I didn't know how to focus the camera. I didn't want to make actors wait around.
Sure.
And so I started to explore stop motion filmmaking, and I was reading all these fairy tales and Jungian psychology related to them. And so then I started making stop motion films based on some of these tales. And the educator part of me was getting very excited because I could see that there was such a there's such a goodness to folklore. Like it's existed for centuries or longer, and it's got all this wisdom embedded in it. As a someone who studies Jung, I would say, it's the collective unconscious and its archetypes,
Hmm.
all of this wisdom. And so I was leaning into that and making these films and then using them with groups to explore our own inner states. And so my presentation skills. So like all of these things I had been doing separately came together. It was very exciting.
So, can you talk a little bit about your process, like how you get from, oh, I want to do this fairy tale to where you're actually presenting it?
Yeah. Well, the first thing besides studying the tale, and I'll read the original and then I'll sometimes read analysis by other people of themes in the tale. Then I'll start to write, and usually I'm trying to find where it lives in me, like where. So there was a tale called The Three Languages, and it's a very common grim tale where the hero has to learn the language of animals. That's in a lot of tales. Learning the language of the dogs, the birds, and the frogs. And so I asked myself, well, what would it mean for me to learn the language of dogs? And I'll riff on that for a long time, like make psychological, try to get below sort of the immediate and find what are dogs and how do I relate to them?
Right, right.
And I remember thinking about frogs and thinking about being in the muck. And what does that mean psychologically to be in the muck? And my background is as a playwright. I mean, I've done that for decades. So that part's really fun for me, writing the script.
Okay.
And then I hand the script to the director, who is also me. But those parts are really separate. Like the writer me doesn't think about the director me. And the director me is like, how am I going to do this? And the writer me says, I don't know, figure it out. And so that's a really fascinating time to be in that creative space of, I don't know. Like the
Mhm.
writing, I can do anything and I do.
Right,
Like I
right.
create crazy things. And then so in the one I'm working on now, Rumpelstiltskin, the king, who's kind of scummy in that story, he licks the heroine. He licks her. It's gross. And how do I do that with dolls?
Hmm.
You know? So it's been very fun to, my belief is that, and I felt this way as a theater director always, that an obstacle in the creative process creates better work. Like I am forced to sort of let go of my preconceptions, wait for the answer. Jung would say it's the third thing, and then find something surprising to me and to you. So the director does that. Sometimes I work with other people who provide voices. Sometimes I do them. Of course, I'm creating the little set pieces. I love working with 11-inch dolls like G.I. Joes or Barbies because if you Google, as I have, treadmill for Barbie, you get one. You can
Of
find
course,
them,
of course.
everything. Because I'm not skilled at making things. That's not. So anyway, I do make some props and figure out sets. And I'm always kind of, AI is constantly giving me new tools that help
Sure.
with um, what I do. And then the editing and well, then the photography actually, taking each still shot of a scene and then the editing those together, adding music. And so that takes many months. And then gathering people together at a conference or other people that I know and watching the film. And usually in the process of creating the films now, I'm thinking of what are the questions I might ask a viewer about Like Rumpelstiltskin has to do with treasure and what we treasure and the deals we make in order to get what we want and then I'm often going back to a film and fixing things later as I learn about the film.
Okay. I've always been interested in stop action because it does seem very labor intensive because you can only move it a tiny bit each time. And so, when you're talking, how long are the films when you're finished with them about?
My films are getting longer, and that is longer is 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay.
My films range from 3 minutes to that long. Well, I've had some long ones. Actually, my last two films have been more in the 7 minute range.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned something earlier that Jung would say it was the third thing. Can you elaborate on that? Because I don't
Yeah.
know the reference.
Yeah. So one of the things that Jung talked a lot about is that we have opposites within ourselves that kind of create the energy of our lives, but they're also like really difficult. Like I want to make this is a little example. I want to make this happen in a film, but it feels impossible. But it's also in our lives, like I love this person, but I'm already married, like
Yeah.
things that are like conflicts within us.
Hmm.
And Jung said that the point is to stay in the tension of the opposites,
Okay.
to not jump to one side or the other. And if we do that, like my husband and I once had a big conflict about whether to sell our house or stay in the house. And we both had really compelling reasons
Hmm.
for our choice. And I remember staying in the tension of not knowing how to solve that problem. And in the course of staying with it, as we kept talking and talking and talking, we came up with a solution neither one of us imagined. It sort of popped through. And that's the third thing that Jung talks about. And it happens all the time in the creative process. All the time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So how do you find or select the groups that you're going to go? Because you go and present these live, right?
Well, it hasn't been so much live for me,
Oh, okay.
um, because I have presented at conferences online and I have presented to groups online.
Okay.
Yeah, live has been film festivals, and that's a different, yeah.
So how do you find the groups that you're, presenting to online and what I like are each of the groups, do you have a different focus for what you want to present to them and what you want them to take away?
So there are so many Jungian groups around the country that gather to explore his work. And fairy tales and the analysis of them is very central to Jung's work and the people that's worked with Jung. So, like, I did do a live event, now I'm remembering, at this Maine, as in the state of Maine, Jung Center. I went up to Maine, and there is a group in February that I'll be with, and their focus is depth psychology and dreams. So it's like anybody interested in depth psychology, Jung, I might find out about a conference and just pitch to them what I do. There's a group that's interested in mythology. There's a group, yeah, they're all sort of depth psychological groups.
So it's really to explore the lens through which you're interpreting it with in regards to Jung that you are generally talking to people about.
Yeah, I'm usually sometimes I talk about my process and that's what interests them, but most of the time I'm presenting a fairy tale film
Hmm.
And we're doing the process of we watch part one of the fairy tale. No matter how long the tale is, I always divide it into three because that's fairy tale, right? And so we look at the first part of the fairy tale and then we explore where are the themes in me, in my life, in this tale right now, in the second and third part. And that has worked. And I have to say, I love making the films, but you could do this without a film. You could do it just with the fairy tale.
Sure.
But yeah, the film is fun, and that's what I do.
Yeah, I like the visuals of the films because I looked at a couple of yours and it's fun because they are Barbies. They're like dolls that I know and that I've seen, but they're, adapted. And that's so fascinating to me because it does sort of bring it forward into more of a modern context, or at least it did for me. And I think that that is really an interesting way to tie into the story and to see it more easily in my life.
Oh, I'm really happy to hear that. And Barbies, I agree with you. I think they resonate on so many levels in the culture. And it's funny because this production, it was Goodman Theater and the Chicago Symphony last week.
Hmm.
They utilized a Barbie in the production in a very like central way. Like the hero holds up a Barbie to represent the woman. It was bizarre. But yeah, Barbies are really like a powerful, you can find them everywhere. And people are always sending me images of Barbies in the news, and they're everywhere. Yeah.
Right. Well, especially after the movie came out. What was that, about a year ago? More, maybe more. And I didn't see it until this past June. I was on a plane and it just happened to be on the plane. And I thought it was great, but I also felt like I had seen all the best scenes in clips already. And I mean, it was, if I had seen it fresh without having seen all the hype, I think I would have liked it more than I did. And I didn't dislike it. I just was like, well, okay, it wasn't the most brilliant movie ever, like everyone's making it out to be. But it's still, I mean, it had some great insight into how we view women and how we treat men and women and how so I think that it's really interesting the way that you're using them because you're adapting them to be these different characters. And so yeah, I think that it's a good moment in time for Barbie right now.
Yeah. I purchase these days the ones that are fully articulated, like wrists move, elbows move, legs move. But there's one thing that Barbie can't do yet, and Barbie only smiles.
Uh, mhm.
And, AI is now helping me make different, but back in my earlier, I just took to clay and gave Barbie different faces, and she didn't look so beautiful anymore. But I just find it interesting as a statement about women that the doll only has one expression.
Yeah, I've seen videos. I don't know. I went down this rabbit hole. I don't know why. It was some time ago. I haven't seen any in a very long time. But there was a minute where I would get all of these videos in my feeds that were about people like remaking Barbies. And they were, I mean, and these were amazing. But they would take acetone and take all the paint off the face and repaint the faces. And so and it was amazing, how different that the Barbie looked with different, like, different size eyes and different, not smiling as wide and all of that. And so I think that, it's certainly, yeah, I guess it is. It's weird that she's always smiling, but who's gonna buy their kid a, angry doll?
Angry doll. But at the same time, what message are we sending to little girls?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think,
It'd be nice to have angry Barbie, I think.
yeah, yeah. Well, in the movie. What was it in the movie? The Weird Barbie? Was that Weird
Yeah,
Barbie?
yeah.
I loved that character.
Mm-hmm.
And she was the wise one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like she was the one dropping the wisdom, the one who had been through some stuff.
Right.
It's kind of funny because I was not, when I was a little kid, I didn't really like Barbies. I liked my stuffed animals. But I had Barbies because little girls did back in those days. And like I would have never like put marker on my dolls or done anything like that. So I was like, is that a thing? Do little kids do that? And apparently they do. So,
Yeah.
okay. So I think that when you're adapting these, are you staying true to the original fairy tale, or is it modernized in a particular way? How talk about how you do that and how you make those decisions.
Yes, I try always to stay with the major plot points of
Okay.
a tale. I tend to often change the gender. So in the film, The Three Languages, the hero was a man and now it's a woman. And I like to do that. I like to do that a lot. And a pure Jungian might go, well, it's not the same psychologically, blah, blah, blah. To me, it's more important to have more women in the story as the story. But most of the time, and it makes the narrative different than other narratives because it really does follow that three times, and that's different than other kinds of writing, very different. It's more like a spell.
Sure.
And that's, I guess, what I'm creating are little spells. Yeah.
I like that.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So what do you want people to take away? Do you want them to say, "Hey, I see that in my life," or, because a lot of fairy tales are morality tales, and they're cautionary tales. So, do you want them to get those original messages, or do you want them to sort of see how it appears in their life, or what are you trying to get them to understand?
Yeah, I would say all of the above. I think the very first thing is just if I could get a laugh, most of mine are comedies.
Okay.
And if it just provides a little joy, that's great. I think about these films like dreams, and fairy tales are related to dreams. They come from kind of the same place, except it's a collective dream.
Hmm.
And so, like at the end of Snow White, Red Rose, which is a tale a lot of people know. I didn't know it when I worked on it. Snow White, Rose Red. There's a bear that kills another character at the end of that tale. And it's just like, what? So bizarre. Like, what? Why? And like it's like a dream. Like, I don't know why. Now, I cheat and I read some depth psychological view of taking on the bear quality in myself, like the ability to use assertion, even aggression, if I need to protect myself. And that's what it's about for me. I've had other people that watch my films and find completely other symbols and symbolism that I didn't see.
Interesting.
So I think I'm hopeful if people wanted to use them like a tarot, to practice symbolic thinking, to practice the world, living and swimming in the world of symbol. That's what folklore is for me.
Right.
Um, then we get better at seeing it outside of ourselves.
And that's kind of what folkloring is. And it's sort of my idea behind folkloring is how we can take it off of the page and start to see it in our lives and start to experience folklore in our lives. And I think symbolism is a really important way that, you can easily bring folklore into your day to day.
Yeah, and start reading, like you're saying, reading the symbols. I was going through a very, very hard time. I had a very, very hard family trip. I was traveling to see family, and on that trip, I saw 3 caterpillars that were walking in the street or on cement or in an inhospitable place, and I moved them into the green. And that symbol of the caterpillar and what it means was so helpful to me as a tarot reading of, you are this caterpillar right now. Get yourself to some safety and know that you might be cocooning for a while, but the trajectory is good. All of that through that symbol.
I think that it's really interesting that you look at it like a tarot reading. And I'm a huge fan of symbolism and of divination. And I think that when you're engaging in divination, a lot of people obviously believe that divination is you're getting energy from the spirits or the gods or wherever they think it's coming from. To me, I'm like it's a back door into your subconscious when you do it. And so using the symbolism, and I wasn't thinking about it like this, but it's true. When you notice symbolism around you, it is a mini divination because it's about how you interpret it. And if you say, oh, that's my mom, like sending me a message that she's here watching over me, that's your interpretation. And somebody else might interpret a white feather in a completely different way. And it all depends on your lived experience up until that point. So I think that that's a really good thing to remember, is that that is a little mini divination.
Yeah.
So, have you stuck to European folklore, or do you spread out to folklore from other cultures?
Other cultures too. I think it's easy to fall into Grimm for me because a lot of the Jungians that I read, they're in Switzerland or whatever, and they're reading Grimm a lot. But no, I've done Japanese. I love Japanese fairy tales. I have a couple of those. I have African tales and one from India. Yeah, I think I hear a tale and I go, whoa, that's hooking me. I want to do that. Yeah.
Do you find that the themes from other cultures are different, or are you still seeing lots of universal themes?
Yeah, no, I think they are universal for sure. I mean, I think different cultures might lean, well, they certainly have their own character
Right.
versions. So Grimm as Baba Yaga and the Japanese tale as somebody else. But by and large, I can't see a huge difference in terms of themes.
Well, I think a lot of those are just sort of universal to humans. We have stories about tricksters in many different cultures. And
Exactly.
so, yeah, I think that when you're looking at those characters rather than kind of the very specific stories, that yeah, you see a lot of universality, but you also see a lot of the same stories, very similar stories in different cultures. Those tend to be closer in proximity. You'll see different stories when you're, on the African continent than European, even though the themes do run through.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the awards that you've won? Because your films are award winning.
Oh, thank you. I think generally awards are coming from film festivals. So they might range from that I'm chosen within the festival or that I'm an official selection. So actually, next week I'll be in Nashville for the Tennessee International Film Festival. Yeah, I think that's the name of it. Anyway, it's outside of Nashville, and they'll be showing Dumpling. And it's expensive, and time consuming to travel to festivals, but when I do and I get to see a live audience watch my film, it's incredible. I learn a lot, and it's also just fun. So I'm indulging this time. So yeah, those are the biggest awards to me, is getting into festivals.
That's great.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here. Can you pick one of your favorites? I won't say your favorite because that's maybe a little too who's your favorite child?
Exactly. They are all my children. It is hard. Wow. Well, sometimes it's the last one I've done. I do like Dumpling is the second to the last that I've done, and I do like that film a lot. And that's based on a Japanese fairy tale, and it feels more accessible than some of the grim tales are just so bizarre that what does it mean?
Yeah.
I also kind of like that because, like a dream, you could keep watching and going, when the bird lifts the character in the sky, it might mean this.
Hmm.
I think Dumpling is more straightforward and fun. And you want me to tell you about it?
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, yeah. So, poor woman, she's she was a great dumpling maker. She's like the best dumpling maker in the whole town. But she's very poor, and people keep coming to her for her dumplings.
Hmm.
So she locks the door and says, I can't do any more. She has only enough dough to make one more dumpling.
Okay.
She makes it, and it's perfect. But before she can eat it, it rolls away and it takes her into another world. She follows it into a completely other world. And down in that world, she meets three different wise men who try to get her to laugh. She never laughs. She used to laugh all the time. She finds out finally in this other world that she stumbled into a den of demons who decide that she is going to be their dumpling maker now.
Oh.
And so that scene of the demons that are saying, more dumplings, more dumplings, more dumplings, that resonates with a lot of us
Hmm. Hmm.
about burnout and about, overcommitting or being caught on the treadmill. And she escapes in some clever ways, and she does find her laughter again. And one of the ways she finds her laughter is by learning to laugh at herself. So against perfectionism and all of that in 7 minutes.
Well, that's really interesting because, that's like the journey that she had to go through and to go from I'm not enjoying life anymore because all these people they want the dumplings and I have to, keep going and I'm still poor. And then to, bring it to life and be like these commitments, the inability to say no is a demon. And they are our demons, right? And we can be resentful of them and we can be still saying yes, and that's what traps us. And so I like that story a lot. But then she goes through the journey and it's such a great metaphor of like you can escape from that. But
Yeah.
you have to change how you're thinking inside. And I think a lot of people are people pleasers and they want to be nice and they overcommit and they exhaust themselves. I know a couple of people who have really solid boundaries and they're just like breezing through life. Like, yeah, I can't, I'm sorry, I can't do that. It's not like they're, oh, I'm so sorry. They're just like, oh no, I'm sorry, I can't say yes to that. Period. And those people seem really grounded and happy to me. And it's like surprising at first. It's like, oh, okay, no. that's great. You do what's right for you. And I think that we can all really learn from that and from, this dumpling maker who just finally said, I'm getting out of this.
Yes.
Yeah. And once you do, when you're like in a bad commitment that you don't want to really be doing. And the minute you say to yourself, I cannot do this anymore, the relief is palpable. Like you're just like, oh, and you feel the weight lifted and you're like, I don't have to keep up with that. And so that's really interesting that she found her laughter again, because that is how you feel when you get rid of those burdens.
Yeah. Well said.
Okay, so actually, you know what? Can you tell one more story? I want to hear about is it the phone girl?
Yeah. Phone Gal is based
Phone girl.
on The Little Match Girl
Okay.
by Hans Christian Andersen. And there are a couple versions, I think, of that original story, but it starts out, she's again very poor and she sells matches to stay alive. She's like an orphan, I guess. But it's Christmas Day and so cold. She starts to light the matches in order to keep herself warm.
Right.
And she goes into fantasy. She does it 3 times. And in the matchlight, she goes into a fantasy. And then in one version, she dies at the end and the angels take her to heaven.
Right.
So in my version, I was trying to think about fantasy and losing oneself in a way that, like, every time she burned a match, it was like taking a drug and she was diminished. She had less matches
Mm-hmm.
than every time.
Right.
So our phone use to me felt like an analogy of looking at the phone, losing oneself to the phone. In this film, she is invited to a party. She's invited to do some volunteer work with some wonderful people. And every time her own fragileness prevents her from getting the nourishment of these interactions and she ends up alone with her phone. It's the one really tragic film that I've made. The last image is she's just alone, where she had opportunities to be with others and she couldn't. And there's a sound effect in the film of breaking glass. And for me, it is her fragility that being stuck on the phone is not helping her overcome, but reinforcing her fragility, maybe. And there's also addiction. I've heard that the little match girl could be a story of addiction, of being trapped in fantasies and never being able to get out. And certainly that's true of our phone addictions too.
Yeah, and I think, in The Little Match Girl, that's obviously about isolation as well, because, the people are rushing by and it gets later and later and nobody looks down at her sitting there. And then suddenly, there are no more people. And when you think about our phones, that sort of flips it, right? It's like us cutting out, and in your story, people were inviting her to the party or to, come volunteer. And she stayed isolated. And that does, I mean, that's obviously we are addicted to our phones. But it's interesting to me that they're sort of like, was there a choice? Could the little match girl have gone into a shop right before it closed or like made a connection rather than just trying to get to be noticed? So I think that that's a really interesting twist, and I like that very much.
Thank you.
So, how can people find you, find your films, and find the work that you do?
My website is psychescinema.com. And psyche is that word that the Jungians use for our soul, our mind, our psyches. So Psyches, Psyches Cinema, one word.com. And yeah, there's a lot, all my films are there and a lot of other information.
Okay, and I'll put a link in the show notes so we can direct people there. So do you have any final thoughts, words of wisdom, anything to share with listeners before we go?
I think you had said earlier that stop motion, stop action is really time intensive. And yes, I agree. And I think in the world we live in today, that everything is being rushed and AI makes things move really quickly, that to take the time to make art, to take the time to consume art, is kind of a revolutionary thing we can do for ourselves, to take a moment to be in something homemade, whether you make it or I make it. It feels like a really important thing to do right now in the world we live in. And the other thing I would say is to really, I'm an advocate for practicing symbolic language in any way you can through folklore. So you are doing such a service, and I thank you for it.
Thank you. Well, thanks for taking the time to be here today. I really appreciate it. This was fascinating.
Thank you.
As always, thank you for listening to Folkloring. If you have any questions or comments or would like to suggest a topic for a future episode, please email us at folkloringpod@gmail.com or message us on Blue Sky, Facebook, or Instagram. Other places you can find me are at the Folklore Podcast as the theater, film, and storytellers correspondent, or creating folklore-inspired games at madmenandheroes.com. Stay curious, stay connected, and keep the traditions alive. And I hope that wherever you are, folklore is making your life more magical.